Ever since I first heard of it, I knew Tarkov was dangerous. I knew it so hard I bought 3 different versions of it. An FPS with an emphasis on realism and difficulty, game and map knowledge, unhealthfully deep mechanics, a massive meta with thousands of in-game items, only some of which directly interact with shooting at people, wrapped up in an easily repeatable game loop. This game could eat my life, easily, without difficulty or resistance. And I would have had some pride that I got eaten, at least in the short term. Tarkov is like black coffee, like pure black, no cream, no sugar, served at temperature at random between room and boiling. It is the purest of acquired tastes, and to almost everyone else, they can just look at it and say, not interested, one taste, maybe, to seal their disinterest. But we, the black coffee enjoyers, look down our noses, perhaps, at those who can't handle the flavor, the rich boldness, weaklings with their preferences and their day jobs and their lives. You lack the dedication to really enjoy some good coffee. I'm not playing this game, I'm learning this game. And when your sorry ass finds some taste, or maybe life comes at you fast and you need these gamer skills, you'll have wished you studied the blade. Like me. Well, like me when I get better at this. Some days I feel like I'm playing it because maybe it'll get fun later. Maybe at one point I'll be one of those guys who can just waltz into a match and take on squads of dudes. Those dudes, by the way, who say on forums and such that at that skill level the game gets boring. Like you're here to have fun. I mean, I even have to be in a pretty good headspace to start out with in order to play Tarkov. I can't play it after work, when I'm having a bad day. It's almost the antithesis of every other video game I play. It's not relaxing, it's therapeutic and productive. I get to work on my anxiety management and my anger management, and after the second stupid as hell death, I can get up, am forced to get up, empty rage in my soul, and looking at the time, disgusted at how much I've wasted, decide to actually get something done in the day and go do some chores or something. You know, useful use of my time. I wouldn't have gotten so much done in my life playing Tarkov if I was having fun. I don't do it to have fun. I'm not playing Tarkov. I'm learning Tarkov, and I'm learning myself. I swear to God, I'm not wasting my time. I swear. All those complimentary things being said, Tarkov hasn't eaten my life. And it's not because I'm particularly resilient to its charms. No, it's not a me problem. I love the coffee, and there's so much crap in between me and the coffee. Since day one, Tarkov has been an incredibly rough experience. This was kind of expected. Tarkov's scope is massive, and Battlestate Games isn't a giant company, so I generally speaking ignored or forgave all the problems, tried to work around them. But these problems were still there, and in some cases they got worse over time. There is a possible solution to those problems. That is the point of this video, why I'm coming back to the subject in the first place, but that's the carrot. Here's the stick. The most prominent of these original problems are 4. The netcode has always been incredibly bad. Massive wait times loading into servers make actually getting into the game a chore. There's always the distinct possibility somebody in the lobby is cheating, and the game relies on wiping the servers every couple of months. For number 1, I am about to expose my ignorance of basic internet protocol here, but I'll try to go off what I've heard from other people. The bad netcode is, as far as I understand it, due to a couple of things. The first possible culprit is that Tarkov is built on Unity. The people who claim this as a factor say that Unity uses inefficient code and chonky data packets. Whether Unity's data packets are comparatively large, Tarkov's are definitely large. Tarkov has a ton of data other than just player position and hit registration. There's the bullet damage, which has a fragment chance, and the state of the armor being hit, which changes the bullet damage dynamically, and a dozen other things I can't think of right now that are in service to Tarkov's realism, but make the amount of data the servers have to exchange with each other far more than in most multiplayer shooters. This undoubtedly leads to slower and therefore less consistent gunfights on the user end. You ever notice how sometimes you're all by yourself and you hit a big lag spike for no reason, and then you hear a grenade going off in the distance? Yeah, simulating every single fragment bouncing off surfaces takes a toll. Additionally, a lot of the decisions about who gets hit, when, who can see what, etc. are done client-side, and for the servers to reach parity, somebody has to be wrong. What all this boils down to is that Tarkov wasn't built to be an efficient, responsive multiplayer shooter, and BSG have clearly been fighting this since the game's launch. There have been improvements, don't get me wrong. The most hopeful improvements in Tarkov so far have been the netcode. Sadly, it's just so built into the game's code structure, this one fix has been clearly Herculean. The bad netcode hasn't just been annoying, it has historically led to shitty gameplay metas, like pre-firing, invisible quick peeking, peeker's advantage, high mobility being preferred to stable firing positions because of server parity chaos. It's been more like The Matrix rather than a realistic tactical shooter, but these are the best ways of playing Tarkov. The less you know about the netcode, the happier you'll be. If you're playing with exclusively new players, like you can in 0.14 on Ground Zero, they might not be exploiting any of these netcode problems, and it might feel more normal. I haven't played 0.14 too much, maybe about 20 hours or so. What I see, I like. I do hear there are better servers with higher tick rates, and that the tick rate might be tied to how many players are present. However, I also hear that a lot of the client-side stuff remains. Tarkov Arena still has a lot of problems, and that's actually meant to be a competitive PvP module, and they still have difficulty getting things to happen at the same time in the same place. It has improved. It hasn't improved enough for me, and it'll probably be a me problem until Tarkov resembles more closely any given multiplayer shooter on the market today in terms of tick rate and player synchronicity. Aside from the refresh rate and the server parity, the overall connection quality is also fairly bad for whatever reason. Loading into matches takes forever, or at least a whole lot longer than I'm comfortable with. Maybe I come home in the evening after a long day at work and I want a little more pain before I go to bed. I can't even get to it sometimes. Match times seem to be around 3 to 6 minutes right now, but I'll still run into the odd 15-minute wait time, and guess what? My boomer ass has to go to bed now. I guess it's my fault for trying to play the game in the first place. My bad. There's a running theme here. I feel like part of the curse of Tarkov is decisions that were made early on in development, perhaps as placeholders, kind of a we'll fix this later kind of thing. The netcode is one of those, and the wipes are another. What are the main problems with a linear quest line and increasing power level for the player? Well, you finish the quests and you hit a power plateau where there are no more or far fewer challenges anymore. For a multiplayer game with an emphasis on difficulty, a finite list of tasks and an overall decreasing level of difficulty over time are a problem. The solution at this point is to wipe the servers and everybody's progress. This is very pragmatic. You can introduce patches every couple of months and you can justify a wipe of the server progress to make sure everything runs well. People like the wipe. It's where the game gets interesting because everyone's at square one again. You have something to lose again. 200,000 rubles actually means something again. People have more equitable equipment. Fights get interesting again. I guess I could see a future of Tarkov where wipes were a permanent feature of the final build, but I don't see the wipe as a serious long-term solution. I can't personally think of some sort of cut-and-dry, one-size-fits-all endgame that might replace the wipe. I know that Tarkov was initially planned to be an open world or have an open world component, but I don't see that materializing this decade. It could have solved some problems, but I don't see it happening. Over the last couple of years, BSG has run community events that have had some interesting setups. Some had players dumping resources into a community pool to unlock some sort of challenge. Aside from a more open world meta, these kinds of events are the main thing I see replacing a wipe, or perhaps leading up to a less regular but more catastrophic wipe. Maybe Tarkov has multiple modules and you can move resources between them, one feeding the other, like if you can put resources from Escape into Arena. Right now it's kind of a mess, and there's only one time during a long period of months that a lot of people actually play the game. It's right after wipe. It creates this fear of missing out, where people are like, oh, I have to play now because now's when people are playing. And some of them are like, oh, I have to play Tarkov every day so I can get to the top first, and nobody will be able to match me. And then they quit a week after because they got bored on their throne. And some people are like me, and they never breach level 30 because I just don't have the time. And then you come in 3 months into the wipe and barely anybody is playing, match times get crazy, and maps get empty. Tarkov has got to get over this before it outlives its alpha. And yes, I would call this period traditionally more like an alpha than a beta, because they're still introducing a lot of game rather than refining what they have now. The cheating is a different issue altogether. I hadn't thought about it very seriously for a good long time, because let's face it, cheaters are in every multiplayer game under the sun. The most I considered was that Tarkov was a particularly bad game to die to a cheater in. The loss in time is much higher than in any other game, and that's what makes victory so sweet in Tarkov. You beat the odds. Whenever you do die in Tarkov, you're potentially learning something. Not to stand there, not to reload at that time, not to wear that armor, to bring food or not, when to move slow, when to push, but when you die to a cheater, you can't learn anything from the experience other than cheaters suck. Hell, you can't even tell the other guy cheated most of the time because there's no kill cams or round playback that you could use to tell if something was fishy. Again, I mostly ignored it. And what can you do about it? It didn't seem like it was that big of an issue. You die all the time for reasons you can't figure out in Tarkov and move on. Then I saw the Wiggle video. The Wiggle that killed Tarkov. Yeah, it did. I fully recognize this is a PR nightmare that BSG can't work their way out of. There's going to be cheating, and they've bent their game over backwards to try and stop RMT, to some absurd levels even, and they went through and banned scads of people, and they have communities of people who are trying to find and flag potential cheaters, and apparently the cheating is somewhat better than the previously reported 60% wiggle chance of you being a match with a cheater. I haven't played Tarkov much since I saw the Wiggle video, and it's not just because of the cheating. Tarkov isn't not fun anymore, but when my inspiration to play Tarkov dies, it's a death of 1,000 cuts. If there were a way to have a more predictable experience, something more on my terms, it might push Tarkov higher on my priority list on those nights I just don't have the time to waste. 1,000 cuts are really all to do with the game being online only, and a friend of mine recommended, hypothetically, that I could try some sort of modification to Tarkov that would allow me to play it single player. Now, I certainly didn't try this, and nor should you, because BSG has been copy striking videos that talk about hypothetical software and banning accounts that actually play hypothetical software. This is very counterproductive, and I'll go into more why later, but this purely hypothetical software wouldn't pirate anything. You would still need a legit copy of the game. You're still paying for the product. Hell, if you're playing a single-player mod, you're not bogging down their servers. It's actually better for them. You could call this software single-player Tarkov. Very easy, that's what it is. And it could be close to a perfect solution to all the little problems. The 1,000 cuts. Lobby wait times? Gone. Bad netcode? What netcode? It's all local. Everything hits where it should when it should. Gone. Cheaters? Oh, no other players. No cheaters. Gone. The wipe? Well, that's still there and it's still a problem, but in single-player Tarkov, look at all these maps. You can, play. Streets has had connection and stability problems since it came out, and don't get anyone started about labs. Swapping to a hypothetical single-player mode, hypothetically in Minecraft, makes these levels playable. It seems like such a simple solution. So what is stopping Battlestate Games from adding a single-player module? The main reason I see is artistic intent. Nikita and the dev team at BSG have been very clear. They have a very particular vision for the game. I don't disagree. Their vision for the game is cool, and it's led to how the game runs, generally speaking, today, foibles and strengths alike. How would a single-player only module disrupt this? In some minor ways, I think. You would know that none of the people you fought were real people. They wouldn't be as novel in their tactics, perhaps not as patient. They wouldn't maybe have as many clever tricks up their sleeves. And perhaps your perception of them as not real people would change the way you looked at the game. AI PMCs could be spoofed, but they would still be AI, running Tarkov AI. That isn't optimal, so you could modify the AI a little bit. They could react to noise, react to specific noise, like pushing when they hear you pull your medkit out. You could build different AI profiles, like Timmy or Chad. You could get them to send you messages calling you a cheater after you kill them, really replicating all aspects of the multi and multiplayer. I don't think they could ever be as cunning or unpredictable as real players, and it would be easier overall. Yes, an easier Tarkov. Heresy indeed. It wouldn't be a man versus man competition of who is the most tenacious, the most patient, the most dedicated, but I mean, it's kind of not that way now anyway. Cheaters and netcode being a serious block to your perception that you'd been beaten by the best. Maybe I'm only here for this, or this, or this, and maybe that's the game to me. Who am I kidding? Live Tarkov is where the meat of the game is. Nothing replicates the tension of being in a live match, but I want to play Tarkov sometimes in ways that don't involve that tension. A more relaxed version, maybe. Somewhere I can just goof around, learn the maps, learn the mechanics, build my own little pile of sand in my stash without feeling rushed to finish everything before the wipe. I guess the question is, given how interesting a single-player module could be, What does Tarkov gain from being multiplayer exclusive? Obviously, the suspense and atmosphere are totally different when you know you're playing against other people, but all the problems with the online portion of the game keep me from enjoying those things or playing the game at all. I love the realism, I love the unpredictability, it's something you can get nowhere else, but damn it, respect my goddamn time. If you could replicate at least 80% of the experience of live and cut all the crap from having to queue or netcode problems or cheaters, I would like at least the option of doing that. The core of the game is great, unique, unreplicated, unduplicated. All of its problems, as I see it, stem from it being a multiplayer-only game. I will pay. Listen, as someone who hates microtransactions, I will pay again more money for an official single-player module to Tarkov. I don't have the time as an adult to waste on Tarkov's problems. And yes, waiting in lobbies and dying to cheaters is a waste of time. Maybe it's a personal weakness, but choose the man versus man game with long waiting times, insufferable lag, and high probability of cheaters, or the man versus machine with none of those problems. I'll take time less wasted at this stage in my life. It's the difference between me playing a single-player Tarkov or me playing the game at all at this point. Now, there's one big issue left to address, and that is BSG's reaction to even the whiff of a single-player mod. Nothing I've talked about today is piracy. You shouldn't pirate, generally speaking. But you remember Napster and Pirate Bay and Tor, right? No, I certainly don't, heavens no. But there are lessons to be learned from the big piracy boom of the 2000s. For those who did go on the high seas, there were for sure a percent minority who just did it to get music and TV shows for free. But for a larger percent of people, it wasn't a theft issue as much as it was a market issue. People could find a better product by going on the high seas. They could find it in high definition with subtitles, and they could put it on any of their increasing array of portable devices without any proprietary issues getting in the way, and watch it when they wanted. The main reason that people were pirating was convenience. This was the pre-streaming era. Discs and cassettes were how you purchased media. You couldn't just download an album or stream a TV show when you had time and watch it whenever you wanted, but you could if you pirated it. This went double for foreign media, where the only place you could find, say, anime with English subtitles was by pirating it. The reasons people were pirating should have been more of an indication of a market failure than it was, but hindsight is 2020. Now that it's 2024, it's clear that from all the attention it's getting, that people really want something like a single-player Tarkov. I recognize it's fully within BSG's right to restrict people from modifying their software, but banning and censoring is a backwards-facing solution to a non-problem. Rather than simply closing your head to it and just cracking down on how people are choosing to play your product, take it as guidance that people want to play your product this way. Now, if you want to be Machiavellian, not to say selfish, you could say this. You own the IP, there are a bunch of people who are actively doing market research for you, inventing new versions of your product, and there is an infrastructure of players and modders who are showing you, telling you up front from their revealed preferences, how they want this version of your product to be. It's all kind of confusing now, but at the start of Tarkov, there was a single-player version there, and as far as I remember, Tarkov was just a means to an end to get to that point. So use this information, fold it into your own product, and make your own product better. You already have the pure PvP element of the game folded off into its own thing, Tarkov Arena. If a single-player Tarkov was a corruption of what Escape from Tarkov is, by isolating an element of the gameplay, then Arena certainly is a corruption too. What Arena does is let people bypass all the stuff they don't want to do, the looting and the tension, maybe the poop socking, and get them right to what they do want to interact with, Tarkov's deep firefight and wounding and healing mechanics. This lets people interact with the game in a way that respects their time more, and respects how they want to approach the game more. Ideally, I hear there are still a ton of problems with the class balance and the queuing and the netcode, one reason I haven't dove in at this point. I'm personally more interested in a module going in the other direction. A single-player Tarkov would do this for people who are less interested in fighting other humans and just want to play the game part of it. Artistically, I don't see a problem with making modules of your game. If you're already going as far as Arena, why not do it whole hog? I don't think it's a detriment to your overall vision, as I can see it from my perspective on the outside. I would pay for this. Seriously, let me pay for this. In the meantime, relax your buttholes. People like your game, and they want to play it. And maybe they want to play it in a slightly different version than the way you have it now. An unattributed quote that I can't find the source for goes something like, "Don't worry when people pirate your game, worry when people stop altogether." A quote I could find was from Tim O'Reilly, the guy who popularized the phrase Web 2.0, or at least helped popularize it, who said, "Obscurity is a far greater threat to authors and creative artists than piracy." Again, we're not talking about piracy, but we are talking about modifying software, which is non-consensual for BSG at this point. But I would encourage them to rethink their stance. The most common talking point I hear from people I know who play Tarkov is that they're not playing Tarkov anymore. Burnout on games happens, sure, but more often than not, I hear them list specific reasons. The ones I listed at the beginning of the video, in fact. A good percentage of them either like the idea of a single-player Tarkov, or they've already experimented themselves, hypothetically in Minecraft. Don't worry that people are modding your game, worry if they stop. And if you make your game so inhospitable to people who want to play it on their own terms, they might stop. The last thing I say before I let you guys go is the one reason I would personally shy away from a single-player Tarkov. Ego. I want to win. I want to win against other people, and to play something that's not that challenge against my fellow man feels like I'm backsliding, or losing, or giving up. I think if you start off playing a single-player version of this game, it probably will give you some bad habits. You'll probably start to section off certain areas of maps you just don't find people because the AI doesn't go there. You won't learn certain parts of the meta, like always wearing a balaclava or something like that. Quest areas won't be as populated as they should be, and you definitely won't learn the caution that you should. I dare say my elite Tarkov skills would be definitely dulled by playing single-player. Keeping that in mind is important, but I don't think that should stop you. One thing I've had to learn over the last year or so is to be able to slow down, be more intentional, and enjoy things on my terms. I'm also getting old. I don't have time for this. So, you know what? I like this part of the game. My ego can take a back seat for a little bit. I might not ever be the greatest Tarkov player in the galaxy. I have too much of a life for that. So I'm going to engage in the things I want to engage in and not allow my ego to shame me into butting my head against something that gains me nothing to fight. There's your life lesson in the Tarkov video. Now go touch grass or some snow or something and maybe take a break from screens for a little bit. It'll be there when you come back. Oh, you know what? That's actually the best thing about modded Tarkov. A fucking pause button.